Well, I'm not going as was mentioned by Alan, I head the Policy and Planning Division of UNDP's Bureau for Crisis Prevention and Recovery, and so monitoring and evaluation is part of what we do, and that is why I'm here. Just before I start, it's good to note that this evaluation covered one aspect of our consideration of what crisis is, because the other half of it is disasters. So this is about conflict. I won't run through all of the recommendations as such, because I think you've seen them all in the report. I'll just mention a few issues that we try to address or that we face as we take all of these excellent recommendations to the field now to try to implement. You would understand, the time it takes for an evaluation to happen. Many things happen. And especially in conflict. If you take the time from when this evaluation was launched, I think around February 2011, till when the management response was finally presented to the board in, I think, January 2013, that's almost about 2 years. And you can see within that period, a lot has happened. If you take just the Arab Spring or uprising or whatever it is, that all of that happened, I think, in real time as the evaluation was happening. So the issues that we face now, is to try to make sure that we implement all of these recommendations in a way that takes reality into account. As we coordinate implementation of these recommendations, there are a number of things that we try to emphasize, because there are a number of aspects of implementation that make a difference. First, implementing is compliance. There are recommendations out there. The board is going to be making sure that we actually have implemented them, that we have endorsed them, we've laid out an action plan. Are we doing what we said we were going to do? Secondly, we have to look at them as an opportunity that we maximize for much broader action. We don't just narrow in and zero in on what a specific recommendation has said and we say we implement it. We try to see what it means for the broader work that UNDP does in the area of conflict prevention in peace operations settings. Thirdly, how responsive are we as we go about implementing these recommendations? Things are changing. Are we trying to adapt action or to align what we are doing to see the kinds of changes that are happening post-evaluation, because the context is continually changing? And the fourth one I would call proactive escalation. What I mean by this is that as we work we do our conflict prevention work, there are issues that arise. Some might be structural, some are thematic, and issues we would like our board to know about. But if we say them ourselves, it doesn't carry the same weight as an independent evaluation saying it from outside. So are we maximizing that opportunity for using that evaluation and the recommendations to make sure that the board gets to know of a number of things rather than us being called to the carpet to explain things? We find our way into that carpet and lay some of the issues we have on the table. Finally, the fifth point is alignment with UN policy. In many areas, agency policy reflects broader UN policy, but especially in the area of peace and security, conflict prevention, agency policy has to align with UN policy. So how are we doing in that? In that respect? You'll find out out of the 10 recommendations of the evaluation, there are at least 6 of them that cannot be implemented without working with the rest of the other UN partners. Although they are stated in a way that refers them to UNDP, it is important that we get the cooperation of others before we implement them effectively. And not just that, 3 of those 6 recommendations, the evaluation specifically asks us to improve our partnerships with certain actors to get this done. So these are some of the issues that we bear in mind as we go about implementing these recommendations. Specifically with regard to the recommendations, 4 of them that we haven't made much progress. The management response was presented at the end of January. This is May, getting into June. 4 of them are areas that where we're still sort of trying to figure out. The one has to do with the multi-donor trust funds. There, the role of the bank is really critical. The way we manage those funds, especially for the big crises around the world, we need to reach some kind of agreement with the bank, and it's not just up to UNDP. Partners have to make sure that between the UN and the bank, that this agreement, at least on the 2-window type of fund. So that's one thing we're working on. Not much progress there as yet. And one of the recommendations 5 also asks the board, which is something we would like to see, ask the board to sort of negotiate space for transition for UNDP, reaching out to the Security Council. That's a very important recommendation as far as we in UNDP are concerned, that the board can actually try to step up to the plate. We believe actually that it's more important for us to work to create our own space, to make sure that the countries themselves concerned and the donors that work with us are convinced that we have earned some space in that in that context. The third one where we haven't yet made much progress, of course, gender balance. That's going to take some time. It's a very, very important recommendation, and we know what that means. It's sort of medium term. Fourth one where we haven't made much progress, revising our HR policies when it comes to crisis conflict prevention and recovery settings. There's a lot going on the plate of UNDP now in terms of restructuring and reorganizing before we get to that point. Now, I'll just run through very briefly on some of the other 6 where we've made some progress at this point. First, conflict analysis. We've completely revamped UNDP's conflict analysis tool, the development-related conflict analysis tool, which is now modular. There are 8 modules, and we try to adapt them to very specific sort of settings. And we've field tested it already in Yemen and in Myanmar, and I think the results have reinforced what we thought we should be doing. Now, the broader context of this particular recommendation, there is a new integrated assessment and planning policy that is now replaced the IMPP, and which has a component of joint assessments in it. So as we do our own UNDP conflict prevention, we have to make sure that we're either aligning or that we know how it fits into the broader joint assessment efforts of the UN as such. Then the other broader issues, one was mentioned earlier, the leadership that the countries are now assuming and asserting for themselves, within the framework of the New Deal is also an important thing. And the PCNA is also one area where the UN and the bank have agreed to revise the methodology. So for conflict, these are some of the larger issues that we have to face. The second one, partnerships for country support. It is true that providing input to the policies, conflict prevention-related policies of the UN can be a tricky subject, but I think UNDP is making quite an effort, and I think we're succeeding in influencing those policies. The new integrated assessment and planning policy of the UN has a lot that UNDP brought to the table in that. And we are also planning to sort of review what the work that we're doing for the PBF. The larger context of this other recommendation, the peacebuilding strategy that we have now developed in UNDP. I'd like to talk about that later on if there are questions regarding how this recommendation has helped us now through an internal debate to reach agreement on what we think UNDP should be viewing as peacebuilding, what we bring to the table along with other partners. 3 about early recovery support. The approach has been to select 6 very specific technical areas where UNDP can make a difference, and there's guidance that has been provided on that. There are other areas I can talk about those when if there are questions. One other area of progress, recommendation 6, better partnerships with the bank. Again, there is this ongoing trust fund effort between the UN and the bank. I can talk about that later on to tell you what progress we have made. Last but one area, national capacity development. UNDP, as part of that implementation, is heading the National Capacity Development Working Group of the civilian capacities work that is happening in the UN now. That I can talk about as well. We've already issued a joint declaration on that. And finally, on improved CPR programming. We believe that, you can only do a good evaluation in crisis settings if you have done good project formulation and implementation in those settings. You can only evaluate what you set out to do. If you don't set out in a way that enables you to achieve progress in those settings, your evaluation will sort of provide the kinds of results that may not be satisfactory. So that is where we are focusing our attention now and trying to introduce some more creative monitoring and evaluation approaches that can help us implement this. I'll stop here. During the discussions, if there are questions, we can go much further. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan.